All right, you guys, we've got our review for Chapter 11, Quiz number 2. Here are all the formulas that you're going to need. Whoops, get rid of that. And I'm just going to show you how to get all of these answers real quickly. We have a prism here, looks like a Kleenex box. Where is that formula? There it is. And it does say volume, so make sure that you're reading really carefully here. Use the one that says the V and nothing that has an SA with it. But first of all, the volume formula is big B times H. What is the big B? Well, the base, the bottom of that aquarium or Kleenex box or whatever is a rectangle. And how do we find the area of a rectangle? Take the two sides, multiply them together. You get 60. That goes in right here. How tall is the Kleenex box? That is the height. The height of the Kleenex box is 7. That goes in right here. We get 420. Number 2, volume. This is a cylinder. It looks like a can of soup or a can of pop. The cylinder formula is this, and so we just need to plug in our radius. So I'm putting in the 4 right here for the radius, and I'm putting the 9 is how tall that can of soup is. How do we type this in the calculator? You start with 4 squared, which gives you 16. Then you multiply by 9, you get 324, and don't forget the pi. That needs to be part of your answer. Number 3, we have a pyramid. So I'm going to find the volume for a pyramid formula, which is this. Look up at the top very carefully. And again, what is the big B? How do we find the area of the base? Well, that is a square down here because it looks like all the sides are the same. This is 8, this is 8. So how do you find the area of a square? You take the two sides, 8 and multiply them together, just like we did for the box number 1. And so the 64 goes in right here for the base. And how tall is that pyramid? Here is the height. It is 12. So 12 goes in for the height. And then don't forget to divide by 3 because for a pyramid in the formula, there's a divide by 3. Look up at the box at the top. The volume for a pyramid is divided by 3. And when you crunch that number, 64 times 12, divide 3, you get 256. Now let's do volume of a cone. It is this. Make sure you write down the formula correctly. And the radius, remember the radius goes from the middle to the outside. So I'm plugging in the 10 right here. The height of the cone, how tall is it, is 12. That's what goes in here. How do I type this into the calculator? Start with the radius squared. You get 10 squared, which is 100. And then do times 12, divide by 3. And you should get 400. And again, don't forget the pi. All right, surface area and volume. So this is a hemisphere, you guys. It is a half an orange, half a globe, half a golf ball, half a basketball. It's a hemisphere. So make sure you double, triple check your formulas next to the word that says hemisphere. Okay, so surface area is 3 pi r squared. We are given the radius, which is 8. So you just plug that in for the radius. When you do 8 squared, you get 64 times 3 is 192. Don't forget the pi. Be very, very careful on your volume formula, though, you guys, because I want to remind you that it is an r cubed. So double, triple check that formula and make sure that you got the difference here between surface area, that's an r squared, and volume, that's an r cubed. Okay, be really careful because that'll totally throw off your answer. But we're still taking the 8 and plugging it in for the radius. So how do I type this in the calculator? 8 times 8 times 8. And then times 2, divide 3. And yeah, it gives you a decimal. Nobody panic. That's fine. 33333 repeating means you can put 0.3 or you can put the little bar over the 3 because it goes forever. Now we have an actual sphere. Notice the difference between a hemisphere. Those had their own formulas. And now we're doing an actual whole sphere. So that's 4 pi r squared and 4 pi r cubed over 3. Be very careful about that. These are going to be some big numbers because the radius is pretty big. So I'm plugging in the 14 right there. Do 14 squared in the calculator first and then times by 4 at the end and you get 784. Don't forget to cube the 14 when you plug it in right here. So you're actually doing in the calculator 14 times 14 times 14. And then times 4, divide by 3. Yes, we get another decimal. It is 6666666 forever. So you can just put 0.6 or 0.7 or 6 with the bar over it. Don't forget your pi for those either, because anything with a circle is going to have a pi in it, okay? Did you catch that number 7 has something kind of tricky going on? It gave us the diameter. Remember, we've been talking about these vocab words for a long time. The diameter goes all the way across the circle. We need the radius in the formula for a cylinder, so that means from here to here. It's what we've been doing in classes, crossing out the 10 and writing 5 and 5, okay? And notice how the 5 is what goes into the formula, not the 10. All right, so the radius is 5, the height is 12, so I'm plugging in radius 5, I'm plugging in height 12, and make sure, here's how you type it in your calculator, 5 times 5 times 12 should give you 300. Number 8, I gave you a huge hint here. Those of you that came up and asked me about this during class said, how do I do this one? Well, you do a cylinder and a cone and you add them together because this is a cylinder and then over here is a cone and they're stuck together, so we add them. Another kind of tricky thing about this is the cylinder, they were given the diameter, so I crossed it out and I wrote 5 because 5 is the radius. That's what we need for the formula. So I did the cylinder first and I showed all my work and I plugged in the 5 to the radius and I plugged in the height, which is 22. The cylinder is on its side. Can you imagine it like rolling back and forth? So if you were to stand it up, you have to be able to think in 3D. You can twist your paper if it helps you, but the radius is right here. It's part of the circle. That's the 5. Make sure you're plugging in the 5 for the radius. That's what gets squared. The height is the distance between the two circles, or how tall it is if you stand it up straight. So the height is the 22. So when you do 25 times 22, you get 550, and that takes care of just the cylinder. Now we have to do the cone, okay? The cone, some of you said, I don't know what the radius is, but aren't they stuck together? Isn't this circle the exact same as this? So if we know that the radius right here is 5, I'm pretty sure it's still the exact same radius right here, which is 5. The 6 is the height. Can you twist your paper and actually look at that cone like an ice cream cone? The height of it is 6. The radius, which goes from the center to the outside, is 5. So I'm taking my 5 and I'm plugging it into the radius. See how I'm squaring it? And then I'm taking the 6, which is the height, and plugging that in right here. And then when I typed it into the calculator, you do 5 squared times 6 divide by 3. Remember that a cone formula is divided by 3, and that gives you 50 pi. So now I just have to add the cylinder and the cone together. Okay, my answer for the cylinder was this. My answer for the cone was this. And when you do 550 plus 50, you get 600. Answered a lot of questions on number 9 also. Yeah, it's a little tricky because you're given the volume here and like where do you plug the volume in? A lot of you aren't writing the entire equation. Some of you are only writing this. But what does it equal? Remember that there's a V over here. Okay, so the volume formula for a cone, I just started by writing it because I saw that word cone and I love to just write the formula before I begin anything. And it also tells me the radius of 7, so I know that that goes in for the radius. That's no big deal. But here it tells me what the volume is. So is that the height? No, it says volume. Okay, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to plug it in for the V. That's what volume stands for. Okay, you're in the habit of plugging in the R that you're given. Well, now you're also given the V. So let's plug it in. So you can see, look at what I wrote in black here. I have 147 pi, that's the volume. Some of you forgot to write the pi in the equation and that made it confusing for you. This whole thing is 147 pi, so plug that in for volume. And then don't forget your equal sign, keep the equals. I still have this pi right here. I know the radius is 7, so I plugged that in. It's asking me to find the height. So I don't have a number to plug in for it, so I'm just leaving h. And then the last thing is in the formula, we divide both sides by 3. So let me zoom in now that I've plugged everything in. Just look at what I have written here in black. You can see that I've started like crossing things off. I want to explain why I did that. So there's a pi on each side of the equation. You can cross those out. That makes your equation a little bit easier. Maybe I'll just erase. Okay. And how do I get rid of divided by 3? The opposite of divide by 3 is times 3. I'm going to do that on both sides. And what happens over here, divide 3 times 3, those cancel. I crossed those out. Right here it doesn't cancel. You actually have to multiply that in your calculator. 3 times 147, it gives you 441. Okay, and then what do I have left here? The 3's are gone. I think I know 7 squared is 49. Okay, I can do that. And then I still have this h right here, so I'm just going to copy it down. And everybody in this class should know how to solve this equation. How do you get h by itself? Right now it says 49 times h, so the opposite of times is divide. I'm going to divide 49 on both sides, and when I type this into my calculator, I get 9. So just plug in everything that you know, you guys, and then use your algebra skills to solve. Everybody in this class passed algebra. That's how you got it to geometry. So just use your algebra skills to solve. Here's the last one, number 10. I like this one. Maybe I should bring in popcorn for those of you that can do this question correctly. How much popcorn, which one do you want to buy if they're all the same price? How much, or which one has the most popcorn in it? I love popcorn, fun fact. Love going to the movie theater and getting the biggest bucket of popcorn they can find. Anyways, this is a rectangular prism. We have a base, a length, a width, and a height, okay? Remember how we would like color in the bottom, and the bottom is a rectangle down here, and how do we do that? You take 6 times 5 and plug that in for the base, which is 30, and then the height of the bag is 12, and that's how you get 360. This is just a rectangular prism, you guys. Look back at number 1 on this worksheet. All I did is I drew popcorn in the prism, okay? So that's how we get 360. Now let's see how this cylinder and the hemisphere actually compare to it. Did you notice that they gave the diameter of the cylinder? So notice how I crossed it out and I wrote 3. Because if the whole thing is 6, that means it's 3 and 3, and I'm going to use 3 in the formula. Some of you made that mistake. So the height of the cylinder is 12, so I'm going to plug in 3 squared and get 12. And when I do 3 squared, that's 9, times 12 is 108 pi, but remember how pi is 3.14. So instead of leaving my answer as 108 pi, I'm going to actually multiply it by 3.14 so that I can figure out how much popcorn is in this cylindrical bag. Okay, and when I multiply 108 times 3.14, you get 339.12. So it looks like, comparing 360 and this one, that so far this is the winner. This holds the most popcorn. Let's double check the hemisphere. Notice how I have my formula here for hemisphere. Be very careful. There's a 2 there and there's a 3 here. Again, they gave me the diameter. Do you notice how this is all the way across the bowl? We need the radius. So I crossed out the 11, and yeah, when you divide 11 in half, you get 5.5. That's okay. I'm just plugging that in for my radius. Okay, and then make sure that you cube it. So in the calculator, you do 5.5 times 5.5 times 5.5 times 2 divided by 3. This is the way you probably would leave your answer in class, but remember that pi is 3.14. How much popcorn can fit in here? Multiply the 110.9 times 3.14 and you get this. So I'm comparing this bucket of popcorn to this bucket of popcorn and this bucket of popcorn, and the biggest number of all of those is this one, so I definitely want theater A. Okay, make sure you show all your work with the formulas so I can give you full credit on a comparison question like that. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Good luck on your very last quiz.